All right, lads, welcome back to another episode of Who's Got the Ball. It's me, James, back here once again with my gorgeous co host, Shane. As always, two of us going strong. What's the crack, Shane?
I think if we need to introduce ourselves as James and Shane now at this stage, then I think we've done something wrong on episode 64. But yeah, all quiet. I can't remember what I did last week. I'm in the hinge, so I probably had a quiet enough weekend. Oh, just down the pub having a bit of fun. Other than that, it's been all quiet. Just walking the beach every evening, making you jealous. The usual stuff. How about yourself?
Yeah, only place in Ireland with a bit of sun, it seems, at the moment.
Yeah,
Sure, look, we have to intro ourselves because we're getting new listeners every minute. Like I'm seeing new listeners rolling in here the whole time. So let's keep the people knowing who we are. Don't want them getting confused. They don't know which one is which and
yeah.
which one's
We're so
support
similar
the
looking as
Jets.
well. So
With the big Jets logo there would be that's always Shane. Whoever has the Jets logo on them, that's Shane. But yeah, nothing much with me. Was absolutely over the moon, as I'm sure you were, with Ireland beating England last week. That
yeah,
was,
came out of nowhere.
yeah, unexpected. We both said last week we were really nervous for it, and we were hoping they wouldn't lose by double digits, and they go out and have a performance like that where they all literally give everything for the shirt. So yeah, really happy with that. I was delighted to see it, and hopefully it continues, and we can grab a triple crown by beating Wales and Scotland in the
Mm,
last 2 weeks. So a
surely.
week off for now. So yeah, let's look ahead to that, and let's move into talking about what we're gonna go through in this week's episode. We got a lot of kind of debates about what way things are going to go or where people are going to end up that and we think you'll definitely enjoy. So we started with the NFL, talked about the QB carousel, and went into all the QB needy teams and nearly all the QBs that are kind of hanging out there waiting for a club and where they might end up. So that's what we started off with. Moved then into the NBA and we had the MVP debate. Spoke about the rule of how many games that players need to play to be eligible and what we thought about that and who we thought should win, regardless of that, but also with that in place. Then we moved into Gan Seans, gave our picks for this week, hoping to have a better week than last week. And then we went into football, talked about the middle pack of the league, how Fulham and Brighton's wins were probably the performances of the weekend, even though they probably didn't play the best out of all the teams. They got two wins that were really important, and how that impacts then the 7th to 14th range and who's going to grab those last few European spots. Previewed Arsenal versus Chelsea. Shane had a few gripes about decisions that were made that put us on a bit of a tangent, complaining about some things in the football sphere at the moment of what we don't agree with at all. And then we wrapped up on the power rankings. So let's jump straight into the episode. You're going to enjoy this one. All right, so jumping into the NFL side of things, there's a pressing topic that we want to talk about because we're leading into a lot of madness, I would say, is what's going to be the next while because
Yeah.
it's just like the combine, then what they call like the legal tampering period, which is basically where you can talk to free agents before they're actually free agents. It's just a pointless window, in my opinion. And then you have free agency, and then you have the draft. So it's all just like players moving around. It's hard to keep up with everything. But the main thing everyone thinks about during this time is quarterbacks. Where are the quarterbacks going? What's going on with the QB carousel, as they like to say? So I'm gonna give all the teams we kind of said between the two of us that are QB needy for definite, and then obviously if we have other ones we can throw them in. But right now, teams with a need at quarterback are the Cardinals, Vikings, Browns, Colts, Raiders, Dolphins, Jets, and Steelers. And the question marks surrounding the Falcons and Panthers also. But that's the initial list. Free agency, we've got Kirk Cousins, Daniel Jones, who's most likely gonna sign a contract with the Colts. Malik Willis is out there. Aaron Rodgers, will he retire? Will he go back to the Steelers? Will he go somewhere else? Russell Wilson, Joe Flacco, Jimmy Garoppolo, and then most likely Tua and Kyler Murray will be released. So, how do we make sense of this mess? What is going to happen in the next few weeks?
Honestly, like you might as well be putting these into a crystal ball and asking the crystal ball what's going to happen because anyone could end up anywhere over the next couple of weeks. Like Kyler Murray talks of the Jets, but there's also talks of him going to the Dolphins. Mac Jones could end up with the Dolphins. There's just names flying around left, right, and center. And like none of it makes any sense at the moment. It just needs one team to make a move, and then the dominoes will fall, as they say. And I, I who will be that first team? If I think it might be the Dolphins are the first team to move on from Tua and go and try and sign their Malik Willis or someone like that, and that will kind of start the run around then. But I can't remember the last time there was this many teams in one window that need a quarterback. So they're all literally all shopping in the same supermarket and they're all looking for the same people. So teams are going to have to start working quick on it from now.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's like a situation where it's probably not the best market as well. Like the people I listed, none of them are gonna light your world on fire. Like really, I kind of had some ideas of where people might end up. So you mentioned Malik Willis. I think Dolphins is one possibility for him. I also think he's a possibility for the Cardinals
Mm.
because Michael LaFleur going in there. I think there's some rumors around that, but obviously they would need to move on from Kyler Murray first. So there's a couple of teams sniffing around him. He's kind of rated as one of the top free agents. He was poor with the Titans. He looked good in a few games with the Packers, but sometimes you see these guys that look good in a few games towards the back end of the season. Now his was in crunch time. He made some brilliant passes. He looked superb, but it was only 3 or 4 games, and he did have an excellent play caller there. So he might be going to from Matt LaFleur to Michael LaFleur, so that might make sense with the Cardinals move. I don't know how good do you actually think he is. Like, is he starting level?
I think he's grand for a team that aren't trying to have winning seasons. So he'd be grand at a Titans, probably be fine at a Jets. Dolphins, he'd be okay. But like, there's no way the Steelers are going to bring him in here and think that they can. Like, I know they played him a couple of games last year, but like, there's a reason he's not staying there as their next kind of their next first and nine because they want him gone because they're looking to kind of push on and start making playoffs again for another 16 years in a row after missing out. So I think he'd be a good like lower down level quarterback for teams who are still kind of rebuilding. But as soon as these teams are rebuilt, they're like, okay, now we need to go and draft our next superstar because this fella's not going to cut it and get us to that next level where we want to get to.
Yeah, that's true. I think he's probably around that level where he can do a job for you for like a year or two. I would agree with that. And I think the Jets are the type of team that go after people like that
Yeah.
because it always seems like they're a year or two away from starting to do some kind of a build, and the Browns are the same. And I think right now it looks like the Colts are going to go with Daniel Jones. I mentioned that, but like he's going to get a multi-year deal after having a half of a good season and then getting 2 really bad injuries.
Yeah.
He's only been fully healthy maybe in one season with the Giants, and that was the year he got the really good contract after we won the playoff game with him. And he was injured in every other season of his career, including last year with the Colts. So I don't know, is that the right thing to do for them? I'd say they'll likely look to get a backup, but then what do you do from there as a backup? Like, do they go and get a Mac Jones? Because he'll want to start somewhere, but then Daniel Jones is most likely going to be someone who gets injured. And Anthony Richardson has requested a trade. That's no surprise. He'll be probably a backup in Minnesota or something, and he'll be brilliant in a few years with Kevin
Mm.
O'Connell. But I think the Colts are making a mistake signing Daniel Jones to a long term contract if they pay him a lot because he is way too injury prone for my liking, and I know it as a Giants fan.
See, I think you're right, but I also think it's what they're going to do anyway. That there's no amount of sense that can be spoken to him here because the start they had last year, they were 8-1 or 8-0. I think they started. I think they started 8-0 before they completely fell off the cliff.
Yeah.
But he was so good in that time that that's all they're going to look back on. And his agent goes in and says, "Well, this level I can play at. So either you pay me or you could have another Sam Darnold situation where I'll go off to someone else and go win him a Super Bowl because X, Y, and Z reasons." And he probably won't. But well, there's no probably. He definitely won't. But the Colts would look like some bunch of fools if they let him walk out to another team and he goes and has a 14-win season next year. They'd be like, well, that's what we could have. Instead, we have Tua, or instead we have Carter Murray here and they're not doing anything, or we have Mac Jones. So I think they will definitely give it to him. I agree with you. I think it would be a mistake. They won't get Mac Jones a backup because, as you said again, he wants to go in and now and just start somewhere after been a backup in San Fran for the last 2 years. So I think it's really risky if they just bring him in and don't get in a kind of a Kirk Cousins or someone as a backup. Maybe not him, but Aaron Rodgers even, who might be willing to go in as a backup now and can take over then when he eventually gets injured and misses 6 games.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. That the backup is going to be important for them, and they can't do something ridiculous like get like a Russell Wilson backup. I don't think he would be wanting to do that anyway. But if you do that, you're basically hamstringing yourself because you know that Jones is likely going to have some sort of injury. The Raiders are sorted because they're just going to draft Mendoza first overall, so that's kind of boxed off. I think a landing spot for Kirk Cousins for me is the Steelers. I think it's just makes too much sense that the Steelers just do something quite plain and quite easy to try and get them through this Mike McCarthy era, which I don't think is going to be too long, maybe a couple
Mm.
of years, if not shorter than that, if it doesn't go well. And Cousins is the type of guy who can go in there and do a good job, but he's the type of guy that'll deliver you another 9-8, 10-7 season, which seems like is all the Steelers rack up. And they're already waiting on their hands and knees for Aaron Rodgers to come back for some unknown reason. They're looking after him again. Like,
Mad.
if he doesn't make it clear to you this that he's coming back, then just forget it because he drew them out so long last season and it took way too long and they weren't settled. I think Rodgers wants to go to the Vikings. I think he will go to the Vikings because I think Kevin O'Connell wants him now. They made a mistake last year. And I think it's going to be Rodgers in Minnesota in the dome playing inside with Justin Jefferson because JJ McCarthy gets phased out and Kirk Cousins is in the black and gold of the Steelers. What do you think of those two propositions?
I think Kirk Cousins is nailed on for the Falcons. I think he'll stay put.
He's done with the Falcons.
Oh, I don't know. I'd be
He's
surprised
done. They
if
cut
they
ties
didn't
with him.
re-sign him. Really? 100%. He's gone.
Really.
Okay, interesting. I
Yeah,
didn't
they
see
were
that.
talking about that there could be a re-signature, but then they said that they're done completely with him. So I think he is out in the cold since the last 24 hours, maybe or so.
Okay, well then, yeah, what you've said in that case makes sense then because he's obviously not going to want to retire. And if the Steelers do what they are doing with Aaron Rodgers again, they're going to come down. It's going to come down to them. They'll be looking at bare bones the same way they were last year by the time they signed Aaron Rodgers, and he could still be sitting there like, "I'm still here. Do you want to put my name on that contract now, or are you still going to hang on for the fellow who's now signed to Minnesota?" So yeah, he could very well end up at the Steelers. Oh, I don't know. There's
Yeah,
something about Kirk Cousins. I've never trusted him. He's never been a quarterback that I wanted to sit down and watch at any stage. And he's had some good seasons, and he was good when he came in last year for a couple of games. But I think if you're a team that are trying to push on and get your playoff contentions back, then he's not the man that's going to be pushing you over that line. As you said, 9-8, 10-7. If you want a 12 or 13 win season, then he's not the one that's going to get you there at all. He's not even close to being it.
yeah, I definitely think that he is the type of guy that doesn't get you above that level, but he's just competent, which is such a Steelers thing to do, and it would annoy the Steelers fans a lot just to pair him with Mike McCarthy because they're already underwhelmed by that. So I think we've kind of looked at Dolphins are probably looking at Willis. Cardinals may fight them on that one. We've got Kyler out there in the cold. I think
Jets.
the Browns could make sense for someone like him, or
I
the
think
Jets. Yeah,
Jets. Yeah.
I have like a toss up between the Jets and Browns going for Tua and Kyler, two guys that are just out there and have some ability, but their clubs don't want anything to do with them anymore. And they're the guys that say, "Oh, we're going to sort this out," and they inevitably never do, but they'll try to do it once again. And I think I have it that the Browns end up with Kyler and the Jets end up with Tua, just because I think Tua is so petty that he left the Dolphins. He'll want to go to a division opponent. But what do you make of the Jets situation? You think it's going to be Kyler?
Yeah, I don't think it'll be too. I don't think they're going to go down that road of. I know they're stupid, but I don't think they're that stupid. I think the Browns are the ones that are stupid enough to pick up Tua on top of the other 15 quarterbacks they've gone through in the last 12 months. So I think Tua could end up at the Browns and Kyler ends up, Kyler Murray won in the Jets, and Justin Fields either released or they might reshape his contract as a backup, but I don't think he'll want to be a backup. But I think it's gotten to the point with him now where he might just have to accept it. And then him and Kyler Murray's their style is very similar. They both like to run. They're not the best passers, so it would make sense if you had Kyler Murray and Justin Fields there that you're not having to make a completely different playbook if Kyler Murray goes down injured because COD is out or something like that. So you can kind of just you can just walk in Justin Fields then to take over from Kyler.
Yeah, the only man to have a contract incentive that had like, or a contract stipulation that had like, you can't stay up all night playing video games or
Yeah,
whatever it was. I don't know exactly the wording that was in it, but like, that's ridiculous that that was included for Kyler. So I think we kind of covered off a lot of teams there. We've got the Cardinals, we've got the Jets, Dolphins, Raiders, Colts, Browns, Vikings, all covered, and the Steelers. We had a little chat. I think one thing that sticks out to me is that Jimmy Garoppolo is still hanging out there, and I think he's probably happy being a backup. He always kind of seems to be happy, and he'll want to be somewhere sunny. So if the Dolphins miss on Willis, I could see them going for Jimmy G and just trying to roll him out there, do a job, pocket passer, build a different kind of system over there. I don't know. I think if they miss out on Willis, Jimmy G will be loving that Miami sun, and he'll be sitting over there happily just taking reps as their starter. And the last guy that's left out there is Russell Wilson, who I think is the perfect backup for the Falcons because I don't trust Michael Penix Jr. at all
mm.
with his health,
After the
and I
ACL.
think Stefanski is a good enough coach to do a decent job with Russ if he does need to back up. So covering off those two guys, what do you think about Jimmy G? Do you think he's an option for anyone really? And what do you think about Russ to the Falcons as the backup?
I like your Jimmy G to Miami shout because I think Miami are going to start heading into some dark times now. With getting rid of Tyreek Hill, getting rid of Tua. They've literally ripped up the book and they're going again. And like I don't think there's anyone in this draft class that's worth trading up for unless you're going to trade up to number one. And there's no way that the Vikings are going to give up that. Not the Vikings, sorry, the Raiders. They're not going to give up that number one pick either. So bring Jimmy G in for a year, a 1 year, 20 million contract, get it over the line, have your terrible season, and try and rebuild from next year then with the quarterback you can find. Maybe Jimmy G will be a backup then next season because he still gets to sit in the Miami sun every Sunday from 12 until 4 in the afternoon, which is pretty much ideal. So, yeah, I like that show for you. The other one was who, sorry? The Falcons backup. Oh, Russell
Russell
Wilson.
Wilson as
Yeah.
the backup.
Yeah, I think it's time he accepts that his role has completely changed in the NFL now as well. I think he kind of accepted it at the Giants, but he wasn't overly happy with it. I think he should go in now and show, especially the Falcons, because Michael Penix could go down again very, very easily. ACLs, like they all heal differently. Some people come back like absolute monsters, better than they were before. Some players never come back to what they were. So it's kind of it's worth a 50 gamble for him to go into the Falcons and see if he could get a couple of games out of it, maybe get 5 or 6 games towards the end of the season.
Yeah, and Michael Penix has been like so injury prone during his college career as well that it is so likely that he gets injured again.
Mm.
And as you said, not much options in the draft. I think after Mendoza, we've got some guys maybe like Ty Simpson might go late first round, early second round, and then after that, it's guys like Carson Beck, Nussmeier, Drew Aller, like the type of guys that probably go on the third day of the draft, just someone
Yeah.
taking a punt and seeing if they can do something with them. But I think Ty Simpson is an interesting one. Maybe the Browns take a punt on him because they have that late pick from the Jags that they got from the trade last year. And another option, I think I would not be surprised if Sean McVay really likes a guy like him, picks him late in the first round, and goes, look, you're going to be backing up Stafford for a year, maybe 2 years, and you're going to learn from him. And then we're going to go with a different style here because I think he's a really driven player. He believes in himself. He didn't play an awful lot in college, but he seems like someone who wants to go for it. And he said he's going into the draft. He believes in his abilities and what he's done when he was with Alabama, that he learned enough in that system. So let's see. I think that would be the type of thing I wouldn't be surprised on draft day if the Rams go and do something like that, or maybe take a Nussmeier on the second day with their second round pick and try and build for the future. But I don't know, outside of Mendoza, it's not exactly an exciting draft class at all. And a lot of teams will be looking to the year after, including the Jets, I think.
Yeah. I think the big talking point from this should be how the Browns are looking for a quarterback again after drafting three of them last year. Like how they've messed
Yeah.
that draft up so badly with the picks they had is it's actually it's one of the worst drafts in history when you look back on it now. That everyone they've drafted, like, oh well, we actually need to move on from all of these lads because none of them are good enough. And they could very easily come out and do the same again this year, take a punt on three lads again, and be in the same position next year. Like nothing would surprise you with that team. Other than that, I don't know too much about the players you're talking about from college, so I'm just going to kind of skip over that and we'll just whatever you said, I'm going to agree with him. Just pretend that I think you're right, so I'm happy enough.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. I think you're right about the Browns though. Like this, they wouldn't surprise you no matter what they do. And I think that's kind of a wrap on all the
Mm.
teams and some of the guys that are floating out there. I think the only other question mark I had was with the Panthers. It seems like they're not going to give Bryce Young a long term deal yet. So I think he'll have to play out of his skin if he wants to earn a long term contract for good money and coming into this season. But do you have any other teams that you think could be looking to make a move or might be a bit iffy on who they have at the moment?
So the ones I had were the Raiders, the Cardinals, the Steelers, the Browns, Falcons, Dolphins, and Jets. So we have covered all of the seven teams I had put together. So I didn't think there's any need in listing all 10 teams that we had because I knew you'd have a couple as well. So I'm happy enough. I think we've given it a good comprehensive look at there. And honestly, I'm really excited to see where all these free agents end up. Like where Geno Smith going to go? So things like that. So we didn't even mention him. He could literally land absolutely anywhere in the league, and it wouldn't surprise me. So it's going to be a long off season.
Yeah, it feels like the answer to every question about guys like Geno Smith is just the Browns, and
Yeah.
then that's about it. But let's move into another debate, this time an NBA side of things with the MVP conversation, because while the NFL is in the offseason, the NBA is in full flow. Right now, if you're looking at the odds, we've got SGA sitting at favorite. He's 5 to 7 on. Jokic is 3 to 1. Cade Cunningham is 4 to 1. Wemby is 18 to 1, and then you're getting further out like your Jalen Browns, Luca around 30 to 1 each, Donovan Mitchell 100 to 1, Ant 150 to 1. So yeah, you're really stretching out there at that point. But the a big point of this year's debate is games missed. So if you miss 18 games, you can't be in consideration for the MVP. So right now, Shea has missed 11 games. So in their 22 games that are left, he can't miss another seven or he's out of the race. Jokic has already missed 16 games, so two more and he's gone. Wemby 13. Um, I think he needs five more and he's gone. Luca's 12, six more and he's gone. So I think that SGA and Jokic are the clear front runners as they were last year, but they are both very close because
Mm.
SGA is still out with injury and Jokic is only a couple of games away from missing. So I think it's very, very close to being the best of the rest, and for Cade Cunningham maybe to kind of pick this up as a guy who didn't miss a lot of games, and that's why he's in the driver's seat.
Yeah, so Wemby is 3 games away from missing, and Luca is five. So
Yeah,
like
so that's
those
a
four are
conversation.
all four of them are so close to the deadline. I have a list here of the top 10 favorites, and it's just like Cade Cunningham is the only one with a tick that is likely to not miss the 18 games. Shea is possible but risky. Luca possible but risky. Jokic unlikely. Wemby unlikely. Anthony Edwards is very close as well. Tyrese Maxey, Jalen Brown, Donovan Mitchell, and Jalen Brunson all need perfect health between now and the end of the season. So it's one of those where it's like, what's that one where the Robin sits in the eagle and jumps off at the end and gets over the finish line to win the race, whatever
Mm.
the Ren or something. Kate Cunningham is just kind of sitting on the shoulder, and it's going to come towards the finish line. He's just going to hop off and run over the line and win it because the others haven't made the 65 games. It's like, I know they brought it in to make sure that it was competitive to the end of the season, but it's actually now just screwing them because everyone is getting injured, and it's a more physical league this year than it was 2 years ago. So And like I know some of the injuries, so Wemby's missing games because of like it's because he's an alien. He's a freak. Like he just keeps missing games because of how high, because of how tall he is. But the likes of Jokic is missing games now, kind of due to wear and tear or having played 82 games a year for the last 5 years. So I think if they brought it down to 60 games, maybe you can miss 20, we'll say. I think that would make far more sense. I think that would put everyone on this list in contention still then as well, because they're not all going to miss. Jokic won't miss another 7 games from now at the end of the season if it was 20 game or sorry 60 games he had to play. So I think if Cade Cunningham wins it, fair play to him. He's had a great year, and the Pistons have been unreal, but he hasn't been the most valuable player in the NBA. It's just the most valuable player only played 64 games.
Yeah, you made a lot of points I agree with there, especially the one about the number of games played. So essentially, that was brought in as like an Embiid rule because
Mm,
the year Embiid won it, all the Jokic defenders and fans were all whinging that Embiid misses too many games. You need to bring in the rule so that you have to play X amount of games. That comes in. And then the following season, Embiid forces himself to continue to play and absolutely destroys himself with injuries because he's going after it again. And then you have Jokic fans now going, "Oh no, you shouldn't have to play this amount of games. Look, Jokic is getting injured. Like the shoe is on the other foot now. This shouldn't have been a thing that needed to be brought in at such a strict level." So I agree with you that it should be brought down to maybe 60. And it's ridiculous as well because I think there was maybe a six-man of the year conversation last year, the year before, for Dante DiVincenzo, and he had like one game under. He played the right amount of games, but he had one game that was under like 15 minutes or 12 minutes, and they're like, no, that one doesn't count because it needs to be X amount of minutes as well.
yeah,
So all this stuff is just like no one cares about this stuff. Like no one cares about looking at how many minutes every single player played and how many games every single player missed before you vote on who's the best player. It's either you're the best player or you're not. If you played even 55 games and you're unbelievable, I still think you should be considered because everyone knows who the best player is. It's not like, oh, we're gonna vote for this guy because he played so many games. Like I think the reason that SGA is the heavy favorite and not Jokic is because Jokic has been injured more. He's missed more games. So already people are going, real SGA has been amazing, so has Jokic, but SGA has been a guy more available now. He has missed more games as of late with his injury, but it's like he was more available, so in people's minds he was pushed forward, and that's only natural. So this rule is kind of redundant in my point of view. And I think Cade Cunningham is an excellent basketball player, deserving to be in the top five right now in the league. Maybe he's not one of the best five players in the league if everyone was fit and
mm,
playing well on a good team. But this season he has been, and he's taken a leap in every single statistic. But he's not as good as SJ or Jokic. So I think I wouldn't like him to win it, or I wouldn't like to be him and have won it and then have this asterisk over it because you only got it because other guys were out.
yeah. Look, I think if you do want to have you have to play X amount of games, then there's 75% of 82 is 61 and a half. So make your line 62. That's three quarters of the games. If you don't play three quarters of the games, you're out. Like 65 is like I know it's only 3 games, and I might be sounding completely pedantic here by saying give him another 3 games, but another 3 games makes all the difference, especially to the likes of SGA, the likes of Jokic. It's not like they're being set because they're waiting to get in a massive, really deep playoff run. And every time they're on the court, they're absolutely unbelievable. So why are you punishing them now by saying, oh, you've only played 64 games, we're not giving you this, we're giving it to the 10th best player in the league who's just had a really, really good standout season. And that's what annoys me. And we said this when we were talking about the NFL awards as well, that these awards annoy me in general. The MVP of the year, like it's nonsense. It comes down to voting, it comes down to popularity. It's not about who was actually the best player. And if this goes to Cade Cunningham, it's just another example of why these awards are so redundant. They're all just about ticking boxes. Here's your trophy, go put it in your trophy cabinet. You can tell your grandkids in 50 years, I was the best player in the NBA that year, but no one's going to remember any of the rest of them anyway. So it doesn't really matter. It's just very annoying the way they do it. And having this rule at 65 is just it's infuriating, to be honest. It makes no sense.
Yeah, and I think I could imagine a situation where if SGA didn't win it last year, he forces himself to come back now and play the extra games to try and win it when he's the favorite.
and then
and
misses the
injured himself.
playoffs.
Yeah, and misses the playoffs and makes everything 10 times worse. So I think him and Jokic both having won it would probably not do that and put themselves in a harmful situation. But it'll also be in their minds that they want to play the games because they want to win it. Like it's like wanting to win the Ballon d'Or. Like, but you don't go on the Ballon d'Or. Oh, sorry, now you made like four sub appearances there. Or you
Yeah,
subbed off in 3 games because something happened, or you missed one game where you're playing 4 games in the space of 10 days. You missed one of them games. Like nobody looks at all this stuff in other sports. I
yeah, no
get
one
it.
cares.
I get they made the rule, but I don't agree with the rule, and I just
'Cause-
agree that what you said and what I said as well at the start. No one cares about this stuff. It's just completely pedantic, and it ruins like the debates of who's the best player. Because if we were just to sit here and say who's the best, like right now, let's talk about SJ and Jokic. Let's forget about the fact of the games played. I think Cade, brilliant season. Wemby, really good defensively. He's going to win Defensive Player of the Year,
mm,
but he hasn't been perfect on offense. Not enough, in my opinion, to win the MVP because there's other guys who are more valuable, and that's SJ and Jokic. So if you were to make that decision right now between SJ and Jokic, regardless of games played, who do you think should win the MVP this season?
I'd go with Shea again. Um, I still think I know they haven't had the season I expect them to have, where I thought they were going to just run amok and beat everyone. But they're still, he's the best player on the best team in basketball, and he shows it nearly every single game he plays. He's always head and shoulders out there. He's always getting to the line. He's always putting shots up. He makes everything tick for that team. I think without him, and I know they haven't been terrible without him, but if they had to go, if he did his Achilles in the final instead of Halliburton last year, would OKC be doing what they're doing now? And I don't think so. So I think he's very important. Don't get me wrong, I think Jokic is incredible. And the two of them, I think they're head and shoulders above everyone else in the league at the moment. But I would just have SGA Pippas.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the way he's played with this team this season, and the fact that he's kind of matched what he did last season nearly to a T. Like he's on 32 points per game, 4.5 assists and six, or 4.5 rebounds and 6.5 assists, with two combined steals and blocks on 67% true shooting. So he's like just so efficient to be that high on points per game and then to be that high on true shooting percentage
Mm,
and still be putting your effort in on the defensive side of the ball. Like he was better on steals last year marginally, but he was much less efficient. Well, not much less, but he was less efficient, around 64%. So he's having his most efficient season and still doing everything else pretty much to the same level. Jokic, superb, obviously. 29 points per game, 12.5 rebounds, 10.5 assists. Like you're looking at somebody who's averaging a triple double, two steals and blocks combined, and he's 68.6% on true shooting, which is crazy. Um, he's shooting probably the best of his career from three, above 40%, and he's shooting the most threes of his career too. So he's doing so many things amazingly well. And when you put that on its own, you go, how can you give that to Shea? But if you're watching the games, you're watching the impact that Shea has had. And also the games missed by Shea have been less than Jokic. So that's another thing that you consider, and you've seen more of him. I just think he has his will to do whatever he wants. The team is amazing, but then he can just click into gear. And there's like Jokic, yeah, he spreads the ball around. He's so good. He's the best player in the world, probably technically. But if it comes to the fourth quarter, OKC are just looking where Shea give him the ball.
yeah.
That's what they do. They want him to have the ball in the big moments. He had the ball in the big moments in the playoffs, and he's backing it up again this season. So I hope he plays the games needed because I think he's deserving of a back to back MVP run. I think he's more than well deserving of that.
Yeah, I think like it needs to not be overlooked that Jokic is averaging a triple double, because that's absolutely, it's scandalous behavior across the course of a season to be getting a triple double in nearly every single game. But as you said, everything you said, I agree with. I just think Shea has just done so much for the OKC that he absolutely deserves to be the man who picks up that award again, because Yeah, they are absolutely brilliant and they blow teams out left, right, and centre. But he's still the one that's helping them get to the level where they are 25, 30 points clear of the team they're playing before. And like, it's very hard to argue against. Like, if Jokic got it, I wouldn't be upset. I wouldn't at all. I'd be like, okay, fair enough. I don't care enough to be upset about it in general, but it wouldn't bother me at all if it was Jokic got it. But I just think it has to be Shea. I think, as I said, they're the best team in basketball, and he's the best player on the best team. So it's very hard to look past that.
Yeah, I think that's a nice way to end this conversation because got our gripes out with this situation and we came to the conclusion we both think he is deserving of it. So let's pivot into Gan Seans from there. Um, Last week, not so hot. Both of us got zero out of three. So I had Wolves to beat Palace, Leeds to beat Villa, and the Cavs to beat OKC. All losses. Cavs huffed and puffed, but they couldn't get it done. You had Leeds too. I thought both of us were going to get that one, but Villa got a late goal. Unfortunately for Leeds. You also had Spurs to beat Arsenal and the
Yeah.
Pelicans to beat the Bucks, so they did not come off. What have you got this week?
So I've gone back to doubling up on the NBA and one football. So I backed Wolves to beat Villa. I know Wolves are literally still 20th in the league, but they have looked an awful lot better recently. I think they actually look like a good football team again. And they're 3-1 at home to Villa. Villa are really being found out at the moment. I said it last week or the week before when I backed against them as well. Their draw against Leeds, they were lucky to get it. They look to have kind of run out a bit of steam, maybe not a bit of steam, but they're not scoring goals from 25 yards every week now. So I just thought Wolves 3-1, full Villa 17-10. Might as well just go for them because Wolves are going to break the record. They're not going to be the Derby. They need one win to not be Derby. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was this weekend. Over in the NBA, I've gone for two towards the top because I really want a 5 pointer. So the Cavs are 37-23. The Pistons are 43-14. I'm going with the Cavs to get one over on the Pistons. And the Nuggets 37-22, the Thunder 45-15, and going with the Nuggets to beat the Thunder as well. So they're ones that it's not like at the start I was going, oh, the Pelicans are going to beat everyone around them. I'm actually just trying to keep it as close to the 5 point margin towards the top. And these two games just kind of they jumped out at me to have a run at them. So hopefully we can get at least one this week.
Yeah, case in point to last week, you had the Pelicans to win.
Yeah.
So, yeah, shipped off
Oh
of
yeah.
that one. I think Cavs to beat Pistons and Nuggets to beat Thunder are good shouts. Wolves to beat Villa would be, for them, it would be sweet to beat a local
Yeah.
rival and get to above that like points total that everyone's bantering them about. But I don't have any of the same, which is interesting.
Oh.
We usually have one that overlaps at least. I've gone the same split as you, but I've gone Everton 7-2 to beat Newcastle away, 8-11.
I was looking at that and I was kind of tossing and turning that one and the Wolves on, and I was like, Newcastle playing Champions League. I know they made a load of changes, but I just can't see. We'll talk about Newcastle in a couple of minutes now, but I can't see that Newcastle dropping more points. But that's why. Sorry, I don't know why you cut across you there. We never talk over each other and gone chance, but I did look at that as well. I do like the shout.
No, you're grand. I think good points that you made there because that is the stuff that went into my thinking. Like that Newcastle are just playing in so many competitions, and yeah, they rested guys, but they played a fairly strong team,
Mm.
and they brought on then Gordon and stuff like that in the game. And I was watching it, and I thought they were awful. Newcastle in that game, they were good for the first 5 minutes, and then they were just all over the place, making way too many mistakes. Carabag looked their match for the majority of the game, which is not something you want to be saying. I know Newcastle had it wrapped in the first leg, but at home in front of a sold out stadium, you want to be putting up a better performance than that to instill like confidence in your fans going into the weekend. And I think Everton against United they didn't want to play. It's just like I think they tried to go on the counter, but every time they went on the counter they had so many bad passes unless it was in joy. And other than that, they were happy for United to have the ball because that's when they work their best. And then in the last 20 minutes, you saw Everton have the ball. They hadn't a notion what to do, just pumping in corners, wrestling in the box. That was about the extent of it. And I think they're so stodgy that they might just pip Newcastle 1-0 in a ridiculous game that drives Newcastle fans mad. So that's why I'm going for that one. Next up, I'm going for the Bucks 26-31 to beat the Knicks 37-22. Friday night, Bucks are 8-2 in their last 10. they're making a mad push since they got Cam Thomas, and they actually look a lot better since they got rid of some guys. I know Giannis still isn't playing, but I actually like the look of them a lot more recently, and the Knicks are making a lot of mistakes lately. So I know they broke out of a bad run, they had a good run, and now they're on another bad one. So I like the Bucks here to just to go and beat the Knicks and push further onto the Hornets because they're right behind them and they're right behind the Hawks too. And then last up, I'm going with my Sixers to beat the Celtics. So Sixers are 32-26, Celtics 38-20, very close. I'm not so sure about this one. It's going to be very tough, but we are 2-1 against the Celtics so far this season. Three really close games. So I expect another close game, and I think I'll just take a punt on two teams that are pretty close to each other, and I'll go with the team that I support on that one. So those are our picks on that side of things.
We could very easily have had the same three picks because all three of yours I looked at as well, and I didn't go for the Friday night one because it's Friday night. I try and stick to Saturday, Sunday, and I just liked the other two matches more than I did like the Sixers, but we were very close. Before we move on to football, can we just actually have a word on that United Everton game? Because we're not going to mention it in the football section. That's the worst game of football I've watched, I'd say, in 3 years. It was absolutely abysmal. Those corners in the second half from Everton are some of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. It was like Arsenal on steroids. All it was pushing, shoving, fighting for place, and then not winning a header. They had 10 corners and they did absolutely nothing with none of them. I don't think they won a single header off them, despite the fact they were throwing every single player they could possibly get their hands on was thrown onto the ground. It was just a horrific game of football, and that really summed it up, those corners.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I would say if you hadn't watched the United versus Everton game earlier in the season, it was just as bad.
Mm.
There were two shockingly bad games this season. Everton are just 1-0 in each. One went either way. Like Everton are just so stodgy under Moyes. They have some good players, but they don't want to play. Most of them, they just want to flap around in the box, do the fake hard man act with Tarkovsky, throwing lads onto the ground when they're not looking at you, whinging to the ref. And then, like you said, every corner, like the definition of what they say, the definition of stupidity is doing the
Insanity.
same thing
Yeah.
over and over again, expecting different results. They're launching the ball in on top of Lamans every time. Sure, he's saying, give me them every time. He's just punching them away. It was not a bother to him, and they just kept doing it. They weren't saying, oh, we'll put one near post, we'll put one back post. Just ridiculous
It,
football
it,
to
it was
watch.
like they looked up Sans Lemons. They're like, oh, this fella's poor in the high balls. Let's put everything one in on top of him. He hasn't shown one time this season that he's not good under high ball. So I don't know who did their analysis on that and said, drop him all in the top of him. He's going to flap at one and drop it into the 6 yard box. All they wanted was someone to get a nick in it. Didn't care who it was. If it was Lemons, it was Harry Maguire, if it was Ndai or Tarkowski. All they wanted to do was target was Lemons to knock it down on top of someone. He was never going to do it. An awful game of football.
Yeah, no, I
Absolutely
agree.
awful.
I agree. I think United to come out of a win with that though is something they wouldn't have
Massive,
done
yeah.
last season. So I was happy with that and going to the next game and see how they play. It'll be much more open against Palace. But
Mm.
let's move into football then while we're on the topic. We usually do performance of the weekend, but we wanted to say two teams had really good wins in Fulham and Brighton, because they were right in the middle of the pack. They were both in bad slumps, and they both got a win. Now Brentford, I thought were better than Brighton. I think it was just not their day.
Yeah.
Fulham deserved their win against Sunderland, who are slipping, but right now it looks like third to sixth in the Premier League table are pretty much fighting for the same thing. They're all pushing around the same level. There's not much to split them up. But who's going to get the seventh and eighth spots are very interesting because eighth is most likely going to be a European place too. So we
Ninth
want to
as
look
well.
at possibly ninth too. So we're looking at a real push right now. I think we'll start with naming the teams kind of that are still in the conversation. So Brentford are on 40 points and Brighton are on 34. So Brentford are seventh and Brighton are 14th. So we'll go from 7th to 14th. In between that 6 point gap, we've got Bournemouth, Everton, Fulham, Newcastle, Sunderland, and Crystal Palace. So what do you make of that bunch of teams? And is there any clear standouts of someone that's going to push away?
So I have those eight teams written here as well, but I put in the bottom three just so I could say let's rule them out
Okay.
because I know Sunderland and Newcastle are on the same amount of points, but
Yeah.
I think Newcastle have 100 times more of a chance of getting into Europe than Sunderland have at the moment. Sunderland are
Mhm.
4 losses in their last five, same as Newcastle, but Sunderland have just kind of fallen like a stone since Xhaka went out injured. I think they're obviously safe. There's no issue of them going down, and maybe next year they'll push for this top 10 finish. But I think Sunderland, Palace, and Brighton are all going to finish kind of between 12th and 15th. So I think we can rule them out. Then it's Newcastle, Fulham, Everton, Bournemouth, and Brentford. I like Brentford to stay in around where they are, seventh or eighth. I just think they've had a really, really good season. They just don't draw games, and that's really handy. They've 12 wins, 4 draws, 11 losses. If they finish the season with 17 wins, 7 draws, 14 losses, then they're going to finish between seventh and ninth, and they'll get into European place. And after that, it depends on if Everton want to play football and if they can get past Bournemouth, because I think it's, do you know what? It's actually probably the most interesting part of this season now because the relegation, like there's 3 teams fighting for one slot, fair enough. But this is kind of like there is technically 8 teams here fighting for 2 or 3 spots, and none of them can put a string of results together. Bournemouth are the best at the moment, 3 wins, 2 draws. Everyone else is 3 losses or more, bar Palace who have 2 losses. So it is just like there's no team in the league at the moment who can put together a run of 5 wins. Arsenal can't do it. City can't do it. So if any of these teams put together a run of 3 wins or 2 wins, 2 draws in the next four, I think that would really open it up for them.
Yeah, I'm in agreement on the Brentford point. I think that they've just had a really good season and they look to be a better team than a lot of the teams around them. Like they are well drilled. Even the games they lose, they play well. I think they should have beat Arsenal in that draw. They should have got something against Brighton. So I'm very happy to rule out Sunderland, Palace, and Brighton. Everton are a joke, to be honest, lately. Their last 5 games, 2 losses, 2 draws, and 1 win. I know I've picked them to beat Newcastle, but I think that's part of the game. You pick an underdog, like they're an underdog for me. They're not the type of team that's going to get into these kind of positions. So that leaves me with Bournemouth, Fulham, and Newcastle for the last spot or 2 spots. And I actually like Bournemouth to finish above Brentford. I think Bournemouth have no other cup games left.
Yeah,
They're in a really good form lately. 3 wins and 3 draws in their last 6. They've drawn too many games. They're the opposite to Brentford. They've drawn as many games as Brentford have lost, but they're still
yeah.
behind them. But I think if they get a few more wins going, they don't have to play in the cups. They could leapfrog them, and then you're looking at Brentford in eighth and ninth. I just think Newcastle are going to get some kind of a run going at some point. I don't think they're good enough to get above ninth, really, right now, because they play in way too many competitions. They're still in the FA Cup. They went far in the Carabao Cup. They're still in the Champions League and they're fighting in the Premier League. So I think a max ninth for them. So I'll go with my prediction of seventh, eighth, and ninth will be Bournemouth in seventh, Brentford in eighth, and Newcastle in ninth. I'm just hoping that they can get back into Europe with that.
I'm saying Brentford 7, Bournemouth 8, and Fulham ninth. I said
Okay.
at the start of the season about Newcastle, it might have been on our first one of the season that Eddie Howe cannot manage when this team is in Champions League and Premier League. I've been shouting from the hilltops with this about him for the last 2 or 3 years. I just don't think he's a Wednesday to Saturday manager. Every season that they get in the Champions League, the next season they fall down to mid-table because he's not able to manage a squad and he doesn't have enough players to manage a squad to do Champions League and Premier League. If they get knocked out in the next round of Champions League, which actually might be likely, I can't remember who they're playing. I think they might have PSG. I think that might be one of
Um,
their
it's
options.
either Barca or Chelsea.
Yeah, so if they get knocked out in that round, then I'd give them some kind of hope of finishing ninth. But if they can get through and they're into the last 8 in Champions League, you can forget about them even looking at Premier League games. They'll be going all out for that Champions League to get the money to be able to spend it. So that's why I'm not
Mm.
putting Newcastle up there. But Newcastle will finish 10th. I think Everton will drop to 11th or 12th, but it's not what we're talking about. So I'm going Brentford, Bournemouth, Fulham for 7th, 8th, and ninth. And I think it would be so Fulham's luck that we only have 8 European places a year. They finish ninth, and they should be getting a Conference League place. Someone's going to mess it up for them somehow.
Yeah, I think it would be perfectly Fulham to get that, and I think they deserve it as well with Marco Silva because he's doing a great job. They didn't
Yeah, he
recruit that
is.
much there. But on the Newcastle point, I know, like I've mentioned before, my dad supports Newcastle, so I watch a lot of Newcastle, and I've said to him multiple times that how I don't think can manage the same way you just said it, and it spills over a lot in the seasons that they get a little bit closer. It seems that they fall back then in the league, and it's a recurring theme. You can't just keep going back to him because it clearly doesn't work.
Yeah,
But a really interesting stat is I think my dad sent it to me a couple of weeks ago about how many times they've played Man City in the last 3 seasons. So they played them twice in the Premier League in 23-24, but also in the cup, in both cups they played them. Then 24-25 just in the Premier League twice. 25-26 twice in the Premier League, twice in the Carabao Cup, and now they play them again in the FA Cup. So that's 11 times in
11. Yeah,
three seasons, which is which is absolutely crazy.
that's like,
Um,
remember when Liverpool and Chelsea seem to draw each other in the group stage of Champions League every year, and then somehow meet in the knockout stages and playing every cup final and playing the league. So it's a bit like that now. It's the new Liverpool,
yeah,
Liverpool Chelsea.
except one is in second and one is in 11th, whereas that was a bit slightly different at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is mad when you see teams keep, and it's probably very annoying for Newcastle because if you look at the results over that stretch, they beat City twice and one draw, and the rest are all City wins. So
Mm.
yeah, it's not been a happy stomping
Happy.
ground for them.
Yeah. Wow.
Um, let's look at Arsenal versus Chelsea then on the weekend. That's going to be our preview Super Sunday. Arsenal go into this eight games unbeaten. They lost to United in January, and since then they've been on this run, but they've slipped up a couple of times. They had that draw to Brentford away that I mentioned, and they drew with Wolves, which is crazy. Like this, they almost drew to Wolves twice this season, and they did draw with them just a couple of weeks ago. They beat Spurs, but to me, that's not exactly a sign of strength because Spurs are just absolutely awful. So I wouldn't take a whole lot in that. It's like the saying, is this team actually good or did they just play Spurs? Like that's what
Yeah.
a lot of people put on when teams beat Spurs recently. And then Chelsea are unbeaten in the Premier League since the 7th of January, but their last two games against Leeds and Burnley, they just threw both of them away. Not good enough at all. And I think a trip to the Emirates might not be coming at a great time for them.
Yeah. So Chelsea are not a serious football team. Again, it's like we're going over old ground again. They're just the things they do. Just mental. That Leeds game, the goals they conceded in that Leeds game are absolutely
Not
off
on
the
the game.
charts insane. And then they just couldn't put Burnley to bed. And I know Liverpool did the same, and fair enough, Liverpool couldn't put them to bed either, and they were caught. But the goal they conceded then is okay. It's James Ward-Prowse taking the corner, and he's the best in the business at it. But they should have been so far out of sight against that Burnley team. It should never have mattered, and that's what they've been doing all year. It's the reason that they are dropping again. They were in a title race. Now they're not in a title race because they can't put a string of results together, and they just they're not going to go here and do anything. I love coming down here and bashing Arsenal, but this is the one time I really can't bash Arsenal because there's no chance they're dropping points here to Chelsea.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I said that they can put a good half of football together. That's about the extent I'll go
Yeah,
because they can play like really well in one half, but then they just look awful in the second half without fail. And in that Burnley game, there was like two more corners by Ward Prowse after that where they should have scored again.
yeah,
Burnley should have won that game. And I think played Arsenal twice in the cup lately. The first one Arsenal beat them 3-2. The second one was 1-0 to Arsenal. I think the second one was just a joke of a game. That's probably the worst game of football I've seen in a long time. Neither team wanted to, like Arsenal didn't want to play. They just wanted to defend. Chelsea couldn't figure a thing out. And then
yeah,
Havertz scored a ridiculous goal at the end, and all the Arsenal players ran on as if they just won the Champions League final.
yeah. I didn't watch that, thankfully.
It was awful. And I think for them to have any chance, Joe Pedro will have to be on fire, Palmer too, and not just score penalties. I'm not sure about their defense either at the moment. It looks very poor. Obviously, Fofana is suspended. And then you look at Arsenal and Eze, yeah, he did well against Spurs, but might that be just Spurs again? We'll have to wait and see. But Saka looks to be flying. He looks to be in great form and creating a lot. And Odegaard is coming back in, whether that be off the bench or as a starter. So I think Arsenal are a better team. They'll get the win, but Chelsea will have some decent moments. They'll get a goal. I think Arsenal will be 2-1 up and just nervous for no reason, like they have been lately, and just see it out in a very nervy last 10 minutes of a 2-1 win at home.
Yeah, do you see the Eze stats after the game?
I
Just
haven't looked.
about his season. So he's 6 goals this year, five against Spurs, one against Palace. His 6 goals are make him joint second highest goal scorer for Arsenal in the league this season, and he's only scored in 3 games. It was his
Crazy.
first shot on target since his hat trick goal against Spurs back in whenever they played the first game. Was his first goal was his first shot on target since that game. So I think it's safe to say that it was just Spurs. It was nothing to do with his actual ability. Although I do think he's a really good player. I think this move has really just it's blown up in smoke for him. It's absolutely ruined his confidence. Arteta doesn't want a player like him, so I think he might be gone this summer. Long story short, I've gone 2-0 to Arsenal here. I don't even see Chelsea getting a goal. I think they're just so unserious. And Arsenal are just going to swat him aside. Arsenal don't do it very often. I think this is one of the times where they are just going to just come out and be all business and just get it done.
Okay, interesting. We're both going with the same result, but yeah, you don't have any faith in Chelsea at all, and I can't argue with that because of how they've played lately. I think you have something you want to bring to the table before we move into power rankings.
Yeah, I am so sick of some of these decisions going on in the Premier League. And I've been talking with the lads about them at times, and I understand that the rules are the rules and so like they're there and I can't argue with the rules. But that Alexis McAllister handball for Liverpool, it should never be a handball. Like his back is turned and he's jumping to block it down. It hits his elbow. Like he's not put his elbow out to make himself bigger. It couldn't be more tucked in when he's jumping. And if that hits his elbow and drops Ekitike and Ekitike puts it in, that's absolutely fine. So why is it that hitting his elbow with his back turned, not trying to gain advantage, and it can't stand? And once you saw the replay, you're like, well, they're going to rule it out, even though it
Hmm.
really shouldn't. And the other one is the Gabriel dive that stopped the Colmorane second goal is outrageous how that's a foul. The one that Ekatika did for his header against Spurs is worse than what Colin Morani did there. And that's I think what's getting Spurs up the wall so much because Ekatika put his both hands on the shoulders and held down Romero and put the header into the corner. Colmorani is just feeling for space, and Gabriel has just choked himself down. One lads made a great point. If Gabriel was as good as the Arsenal fans say he is, he wouldn't need to flop around as much as he does. And I think that's I just both of those decisions drove me insane over the weekend. And it's not the first time this year. It's the same with the penalty that Man City got against Liverpool. Yes, it's a penalty, but if you're getting to the ball solely to kick it out, then like, why is it a penalty? You're never getting to it. There's no advantage to you kicking it over the keeper straight into the crowd. They need to be changed because they're driving everyone insane. Everyone has the same opinion. And what's the point of going on like this when nobody is happy with how these decisions are going every single week?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think the McAllister one and the law even makes less sense as well because I'm not sure on this. I might be wrong, but I think that if he they kicked it off him and it hit his elbow and it went on the ground and then he turned around and kicked it in, I think that's also not going to be allowed because he set
Yeah,
himself up for a goal scoring opportunity
yeah, you're
and
right.
did
Yeah.
his errand. Wait, how does that make like I know it's you're just pushing like I'm just kind of looking at small details and making a big deal out of it here, but like I just think it's completely ridiculous that that would even be included in it. That like that could be a possibility that you'd set yourself up in that way. Then he's kicking it into the net, so there goes your issue of it hitting the arm and going in, which shouldn't have been an issue in the first place. Because like you said, his elbow is literally welded to his side. There's nothing else he can do. I just think that was yeah, I agree with that. And I even stronger have an even stronger opinion about the Gabriel one. For a guy who in the opposition penalty box suplexes players onto the ground
Mm,
and borderline like MMA fighting in the box and they get away with it. And you can't even just even it was just even a rest on his back. It wasn't even a push more than anything. It was kind of a like you said, you put your hand out and you're putting yourself into space to set yourself. and he throws himself on the ground, and then the ref doesn't give VAR a chance to intervene because he's going no goal before it's even like, oh, it's a goal, let's take a look at it after, like they do
The,
say in rugby.
yeah, like the way he fell should be enough of a reason not to be disallowing the goal because he's clearly making such a dramatic issue out of it that it's not a foul. It's quite simply not a foul. And that might be a different game if it gets back to 2-2 because they've been pegged back for a second time. They probably don't go on and win 4-1. Spurs are still Spurs. They probably still would have won it maybe 3-2 or something with a late goal, but it's a completely different game. I actually stopped watching the game after that. I was like, I actually cannot deal with any of the rest of this game now if that's getting ruled out for foul. So I literally just walked away and left it there and went back down and saw it finish 4-1. I was like, okay, that makes sense. That's the way it was going when that goal was ruled out. These are the kind of decisions that just make everybody angry. Nobody wants to see these things given, and bar the Premier League, obviously. And then in Europe, it's worse, but we won't get into that. The handball rule in Europe, I don't know what a handball is in Europe, and I don't think I ever will for the rest of my life. Every time the ball hits a hand now, I think, oh, that's penalty, and then oh, it's not, and then it does like, oh, that's definitely not a penalty, and it is. It's like everything I think is the opposite. Another one was the Bodo Glint one last night. Yes, that one is a penalty, 100%. When he puts his heel back and kicks sorry, not Bodo Glint, sorry, Dortmund against
Yeah.
Atlanta. Like that one's a penalty, but the ones where the player is ducking down with his head and he gets kicked in the head, it's your own fault.
He's almost on
Like,
the ground
yeah,
sometimes.
exactly. You're
This guy.
ducking down to knee level, and you get kicked in the head because your man's put his foot in because he doesn't want to go head to head with you, and you get a penalty. That shouldn't be a penalty either. But there's just so many things that have really started annoying me in the
Yeah.
last couple of weeks. Might be getting old, but it was just those two at the weekend in particular, and they were both on Sunday. They'd have to sit and through that Liverpool match, which was almost as bad as Everton United in the first half because Liverpool were not a football team in that first half. It's one of the worst I've ever seen. And then I had to go in and watch Gabriel Tom Dalying all over the place and getting away with it and stopping goals counting. But I was just couldn't. I was so sick of it.
Well, while
Yeah,
we're on it, that Champions League in the Champions League, that Kelly red card was an
unbelievable.
absolute disgrace. Like he's literally jumping and landing, and he just happens to land on somebody, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's a red card because it was with your
And then
studs." Well,
with
obviously,
what
what do you want me to
Camavinga
do?
did
Land
then.
on my laces?
Yeah, Camavinga then is doing the same thing and he actually kicks out and kicks the Benfica player on the ground underneath him. And nothing is said about it. So
It's just so inconsistent. And then
yeah,
you
but the
also
Lloyd
have,
Kelly one. Yeah, like what's Lloyd Kelly meant to do? Like he's
like,
literally gone up for a header and your man has lost his footing. And then Lloyd Kelly is he's not even stamping. He's literally coming down at a
yeah,
normal
he's
pace.
just landing.
And your man is just in the way. There's nothing he can do about it. And I know he rakes down the back, but it's not like he's gone out to intentionally do a Bernardo Silva and try to kick someone down the back of their leg. He just has nowhere else to put his foot.
Yeah, and then you mentioned like people getting kicked in the head, and then you saw what was it, Trossard or Martinelli recently for Arsenal had to
Oh,
go off with a
Trossard
concussion because he got like someone put
hitting
their
his
hand on his
shoulder.
shoulder.
Yeah.
Like that should be a retrospective ban because
Hmm.
you're using the concussion sub rule to gain an advantage there.
Well, he shouldn't
But
have been allowed to play the next game, I think.
no, he shouldn't have been. And also that they use that as an extra sub, which
Yeah.
and when it's not actually a concussion, teams can just do that whenever they want now, if that's
Yeah.
what's going to happen. But yeah, we do sound like our lads giving out, but a lot of these things are very annoying when you just want to watch the game and not be plagued by this sort of crap all the time. But we'll move into the power rankings to wrap things up. I'll go ahead first. So last week we did our rankings and I watched Arsenal then draw to Wolves, and I said, I'm putting this out on social media the next day. I am not leaving Arsenal where I had them. So I bumped them down to last place where you had them also. So that is the one I'm going
I
off
did also
rankings.
say they were going to draw Wolves three
You
times on the
did.
podcast last week.
Yeah, you did. 100%. You called it. But I had, so going off that one then, I had Pistons, Cavs, Man United, Hornets, City, and Arsenal in sixth. So this week, I've gone slightly different. Pistons are still first. I've got the San Antonio Spurs coming in at second. They've won 10 games in a row. They've been absolutely brilliant, so they're moving in there. Man City move up to third because they're on a 3 game winning streak. They look like they're putting a lot of pressure on Arsenal. So that drops United down a spot because although they still are on a great run, unbeaten under Carrick, their performance against Everton was not warranted of a third place in this. And then fifth, I've got OKC coming back in. I know they've not been amazing as of late, but like they beat the other night, they beat the Pistons without basically their whole squad, and they look really good. They look like a team even without Chet, without Jalen Williams, without SGA. They can still be so good. And then sixth is Arsenal. They just stay where they are. So it's Pistons, Spurs, San Antonio Spurs, City, United, OKC, and Arsenal.
Yeah, that's fair. So last week I had Pistons, Hornets, Chelsea, San Antonio Spurs, Manchester United, and Arsenal Football Club. I have pushed the San Antonio Spurs up to number one for me. Because they're 10 wins in a row now. They were in there for me last week, so I'm not just kind of bringing them in and dumping them on top. I think they are deserving to be up there. So that drops Pistons to second for me. Man City are back in for me, and they're in a third. Same reasons as you said, they've just been excellent recently. I didn't want to take the Hornets out, even though they haven't been the same. It's like the All Star break came at the worst possible time for them. But they might drop out next week, but they're not dropping out this week. OKC will probably be back in there next week. And then United and Arsenal finish out my top six, the same as last week. So San Antonio Spurs, Pistons, Man City, Hornets, Manchester United, and Arsenal.
Nice. I want to correct myself because I did say that they beat the Pistons. I meant to say they beat the Cavs, missing players.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they were quite good against the Pistons, but they didn't get the job done. But still, missing a lot of players, they still did good. That's OKC that I'm talking about. But yeah, those are our two lists, power rankings. Another week wrapped. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Plenty of debates in this one. Plenty more to come as the season goes on. So hope you're enjoying. Throw it to you, Shane, to wrap it.
Yeah, cheers, lads. Just really appreciate all the support. I'll be in Prague for the Ireland game in a month's time as well, so I'll try and get a couple of bits done for that as well. Not 100%. I probably actually am nearly 0% chance I'll be going to the game at this stage because tickets are so hard to come by. But I'll be in around the fun and the fan zone. So give us a follow if you want to see more about that, and we'll be talking about that more in the next couple of weeks when it's time to come closer as well. So get us on the road to 100,000 followers, as I say every week now, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, the week after or a few days after, if Ireland get the win in Czech Republic, I shall be seated for their next game. Have it ready, rocking season ticket. Let's go. They're gonna win in Prague. Let's just say it.
Yeah, they are. Welcome back to another episode of Who's Got the Ball with Shane and James.